Known as the Heart of Flames, Phlegethos is the fourth layer of the 9 Hells of Bator. It epitomizes the classic vision of what hell is supposed to look like, a fiery wasteland steeped in sanctioned debauchery and damnation. Phlegethos is a layer of fire and pain, of vice and sex, and of court and contracts. This is where you will find the Court Infernal, the heart of Hell's elaborate judicial system, as well as the foundries that craft the armaments for the endless legions of devils that live here. This is also where you will find some of the darkest and most taboos of sins found in all of the Hells. The landscape of Phlegethos is as bleak as the dark deeds that the devils commit here. Jets of flame gush from fissures in the charred ground, and hills of ash and pits of smoldering waste pockmark the terrain amid the hulking volcanoes eroded everywhere. Overhead hangs a dark, starless sky, an empty void lit only by the glow of the fires below. Rivers of lava ooze from the volcanoes into bubbling lakes and seas of magma. These rolling, fiery seas fuel tempests of blistering wind, choking smoke and pyroclastic ash. And the heat pervades everything. The very ground scorches any who walk upon it, and the air is so hot that it chars flesh instantaneously. Even devils fear some of the areas here in Phlegethos, for in them lay one of the most powerful forces in all of Dungeons & Dragons, Hellfire. Said to be the force that once transformed the original devils and created the 9 Hells, produced by one of the most powerful gods that the multiverse has ever seen. This is going to be a crazy video, but first, before we continue, this video is brought to you by, well, me. I have a few announcements to make. So I just released a new PDF on my store at MrRhexx.store called The Faces of Evil, a collection of evil-themed subclasses with one subclass for each of the classes in 5th edition, so 12 subclasses. Each subclass comes with lore and character creation tables to help you conceive the spectacularly morally great characters that you can make with these guys. We got the Barbarian Path of Shadow, the Bard College of the Dirge Singer, a remake of the Cleric of Death Domain, a Druid Circle of the Witch, a Fighter Spirit Warrior, a Way of the Profane Life Monk, an Oath of the Fallen Paladin, a Revenant Ranger, an Occultist Rogue, a Blood Magic Sorcerer, a Warlock with a Vampire Patron, and a Necromancy Focused Wizard. I also got 2 new species in here that you can use to make your characters, the Vampire Spawn and the Flesh Golem. If you're interested, please consider checking it out at my store, again at MrRhexx.store. The Occultist Rogue, by the way, is like my favorite subclass that I have ever made. Holy fuck, it's so good. But I also finally got my hardcover book, Sense of Doom, as print on demand, as well as the DM screen and battle maps for the adventure. So if you want to grab yourself a copy or just get the PDF, you can finally do so at MrRhexx.store. It's been a long road, but I'm finally ready to be able to just offer it for anyone that wants to buy it. And also for those of you who are like me and basically play exclusively on VTTs, I am happy to announce that Sense of Doom is finally out on Roll20. All the maps are there, I've got more than 100 tokens programmed in, and everything is already pre-set up and beautiful so that you guys can just play on Roll20. So please consider checking it out. I spent so many hours working on it, so I am sure that you guys are gonna love it. It's amazing. It is with your great support that I am even able to do all of this, so thank you all so much. But that's all for the announcements. Sorry about all that. Now let's get back onto the video. Phlegethos is essentially a vast, brutal expanse dominated by volcanoes, a tortured nightmare landscape of fire and molten rock where intense heat makes ordinary life impossible. The very nature of Phlegethos amplifies the power of flame while smothering the influence of water and ice. And of course, magic or elemental abilities tied to water or cold are similarly made feeble here, if they even worked at all. The most important part though is that any being that lacks immunity to fire is instantly incinerated by the fiery environment of the layer as soon as they step here. See, everything in Phlegethos exists to burn. In fact, this layer resembles the elemental plane of fire more closely than any other place in the cosmos, except of course for the fact that in here, the flames are imbued with law and evil. But what does that even mean? Well, for law, it basically means that there is a purpose and a pattern to what or how the fire of Phlegethos burns. In particular, the lore describes that the flames of the environment specifically target those found unworthy, those who shouldn't be here. For example, if you invade this layer, or if you were imprisoned here and now seek to escape, the spouts of flames that permeate the layer will seek you. However, if you come here legally and lawfully, so for example, if you were summoned here to attend devil court or come at the behest of a devil, then you would be able to walk within this layer's excruciating heat without taking any damage. And then, as far as what the fire steeped in evil would mean, well, it basically means that the fire of Phlegethos seek to cause as much pain and suffering as possible. Creatures that burn here don't quite die quickly, if you catch my meaning. And the fire here is particularly painful, more so than normal fire. And of course, to withstand all of this, every structure built in here is built to endure the tremendous heat and to withstand the periodic flows of lava diverted throughout the terrain. Now, the extreme volcanic activity here in Phlegethos is extraordinarily dangerous, but it also has endowed the land here with immense mineral wealth. It is said that every common metal can be mined here, sapphires, rubies, diamonds, you name it, along with rare and special infernal ores unique to the Nine Hells, such as Batorian green steel, which we will talk about later on. But there are also other special ores that are specifically mined or forged here, such as one called Argeli, or Argel, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and another one called Tentulhor. But there really isn't much lore about them other than to say that there are many powerful magic items here in Hell that are made from them. Now, interestingly, many of the plane's burning rivers are not actually streams of lava as you would imagine they would be, but they are literal rivers of fire. These currents of flame curses through the layer and then pool into brilliant lakes of fire. In fact, Phlegethos is famous even in the mortal realm for its firefalls, natural cascades of flame that pour off volcanic riches into clefts in the ground. Now, the reason that they're famous is because the properties of the liquid fire is apparently shockingly useful for the creation of magical items, and so forges are created along the firefalls to create them. Now, allegedly, the most powerful flame-tongue swords are crafted here, in fact, and the place is also famous for the helms of brilliance that you can make here, again because you can find almost any kind of beautiful gem on this layer, which does work great, again, for this helmet, which uses them. And of course, all of Phlegethos' rivers and lakes of flame are interconnected, all flowing together into one immense burning network. But despite all of this fire, though, Phlegethos does have a few incongruous pockets of moisture in the far outskirts, where you could actually find some fens that are similar to those found in Minauros, the previous layer that we covered. It is funny, though, that the lore does state that in those fens, you could find a form of plant life called fire grapes, which is, in fact, the source of the famous infernal wine brewed by devils. Now, the only settlement found in Phlegethos is Abrimok, also called the Mount of Leaping Flames, what you could describe as the molten heart of this entire layer. This fortress city rises from inside the largest volcano of the layer and is, in fact, literally carved out of the volcano itself. Abrimok's architecture was forged from hardened magma and black glassy rock, some obsidian and dark crystalline materials all fused together. Now, the layout of the city takes full advantage of its volcanic foundation. The city is built in tiers of chambers and corridors that honeycomb the hollow interior of the active volcano. A tremendous spiral roadway wounds along the inner wall of the volcanic shaft, linking various levels from the rim down into the depths. Countless tunnels, shafts, and stairways branch off from this path, connecting to different sections of the city. Many chambers open to balconies that overlook the volcano's glowing central caldera, while some other passageways are bored through into the outer slopes, ending in fortified doors and windows that would lead out of the volcano. Meanwhile, at the lip of the crater at the very top, you would see a ring of midnight black basalt towers that step upwards into the sky, almost looking like it forms a crown around the volcano's edge. Now, at the core of the city, like right at the middle, you would have the central cauldron of the volcano, all of it which churns with molten lava. Various districts of Abrimok are actually built on rocky platforms that jut out like islands above the lake of lava. And because travel on foot is very impractical, as you can imagine, across all of these gaps and rivers, residents and visitors frequently move about using gondolas, scorched and dented metal skiffs that were pulled through the lava by by bearded devils, all of it made by this interesting metal called the Batorian green steel, which again we will talk about it later. Ironically, the volcano itself provides one of the few sources of shelter that actually exists on this layer. It's one of the safest places where you can be here. But as you can imagine, Abremok is the official seat of power for the Lords of the Fourth, Belial and Fierna. But its day-to-day governance is entrusted instead to the Viceroy, a pit fiend named Gasra. Now, Gasra is interesting because he's not only Abremok's governor and chief enforcer, but he's also the devil in charge of policing the first 4 layers of hell: Avernus, Dis, Menauros, and Phlegethos. In particular, we're talking about like actual military armies type of policing, not petty crime. So if demons manage to break through Avernus, for example, then it would be Gasra's responsibility to organize the devil legions to counterattack. But since that rarely happens, he largely focuses on stamping out serious corruption within the infernal bureaucracy of the first 4 layers, as well as handling devils that desert from the army, which is most of the work that he actually ends up doing. Now, Abremok is said to be the mightiest fortress in the middle layers of hell, largely because of Gasra's formidable patrol army. Fully 5,000 barbed devils serve as his watchmen and soldiers, which patrol both the city and its surroundings. Important, of course, not just because it is supposed to be a place designed to protect these first layers of hell, but also because, as we mentioned before, the city houses the infamous Court Infernal, which must be protected. The courts are overseen by pit fiend judges and presided over by a Pailirion, which is a special kind of devil called a corruption devil. Now, the courts are designed to be impartial and independent from all of the archdevils, but we all know that they will always answer to the one and only Asmodeus himself. Now, in these halls, devils from all across the 9 hells make their cases and accusations heard. The Court Infernal is a bloated maze of bureaucracy, nearly impossible to navigate, as you can imagine. Devils ceaselessly scheme to introduce new laws or twist precedent to gain any advantage that they can, to the point where the Code of Bator has, at this point, swollen into an incredibly intricate body of loophole-ridden statutes and exceptions. It is said that entire cases drag on for years because of how complex it all becomes. But you should know that the main focus of the court is to handle disputes specifically between devils, and primarily those that serve different masters, because usually when you have 2 devils that have some kind of dispute and they both serve the same archdevil, if they're both from the same layer, for example, then those cases are typically handled internally without the need for the court. Now, on the rarest of occasions, though, you do see the petition of a damned soul that can actually reach the Court Infernal. For example, if they claim that the terms of the ancient Pact Primeval that they have been consigned to hell with is unfair, and in theory, such a claim could actually be, if they could be proven, then the soul could be released from its damnation, but in practice, as you can imagine, that almost never happens. The court usually never rules in favor of such a petitioner, but it is possible, as rare as it can be, to see a mortal in these courts. It just doesn't happen very often. Now, what's interesting is that in spite of the strict legalism of the courts, which is like the main centerpiece of the city, the city of Abremok itself is actually operated with a lot of permissiveness, purposefully so in fact. See, everything is legal in Abremok, ironically turning the city into what the lore describes as a twisted carnival of dark desires. It was actually considered the 9 Hells' premier pleasure city, a place where devils on leave could indulge in every vice and every forbidden thrill. You would have infernal casinos, taverns, theaters, and any other kind of entertainment in the city here, offering everything from games of chance and soul wagering to decadent performances of sin of all kinds. Duke Shamo, one of Belial's vassals, was charged with overseeing Abremok's economy and keeping these enterprises running profitably for their masters. But profit in Abremok is not entirely made from vice alone. In fact, this fortress city was also a major hub for Hell's military complex. The magma streams that run beneath Abremok and other places in Phlegethos yields a very important type of ore, which we have already brought twice before. But this ore is used to create the famous Batorian green steel, a metal found only in the Hells and specifically only in this layer of Hell. Many of the forges in the city here are devoted to smelting and shaping this green-hued iron into weapons and armor for the infernal legions. This is in fact the main metal used for any and all of the mundane weaponry that is used in hell. Contrasted with infernal iron, which is typically used for more special needs like, soul coins or the more complex infernal machinery of Avernus, for example. Now, in the Tyrants of the Nine Hells book for 3rd edition, it was described that a weapon made with Batorian green steel simply dealt 1 additional damage when compared to a counterpart made from traditional steel, which it doesn't sound like a lot, just 1 damage. But it is mathematically equal to increasing the damage dice of the weapon by 1 grade, so basically making a longsword deal 1d10 damage rather than 1d8. And hey, when you look at it through those lenses, it's actually pretty good. This is why looting the mundane weapons carried by devils is always good, because they will always be better than your typical mortal steel, but I digress. Let's now talk about the archdevils of Phlegethos, and that's right. That's a plural because unlike the rest of the 9 hells, Phlegethos is unique in that it has 2 archdevils that rule over it. Belial and Fierna, father and daughter. In a unique arrangement ordained by Asmodeus, these 2 share the rulership of the 4th. Belial and his daughter Fierna hold court in Abramok, in a grand palace of basalt and obsidian perched on the rim of the volcano. The 2 archdevils were often said to lounge together in pools of magma, discussing politics and strategy at their ease, while Gazra managed the day-to-day affairs of the realm. Now, Belial manages the so-called machinery of the layer, so this would include the diabolical cords, the output of the forges, the weapon quotas that feed Hell's army, and any other form of logistical and, bureaucratic work that goes behind the scenes, while Fierna, on the other hand, is the public face of the 4th, and her tasks are largely the acquisition of souls, because yes, even archdevils have quotas that they have to fill. She also handles the licensing of sanctioned pleasures under Duke Shamo and is the principal negotiator for all manners of politics. Now, officially, the layer is meant to have only 1 archdevil, and originally it was Belial, who is one of the oldest archdevils in the 9 hells, one of the OGs, if you will. But after the events of the Reckoning, the great civil war of the 9 hells, where many archdevils sought to supplant Asmodeus, Asmodeus ended up demoting Belial as a punishment, and in its stead, Fierna was made to rule. But of course, unofficially, both basically rule in tandem, and everyone knows that. And it appears that Asmodeus, at least for the time being, is fine with it. Now, anyhow, their partnership was a peculiar mix of respect and rivalry. In public, they operate as a team and even show genuine admiration for one another's devious intellects. Yet each is always quietly testing the other one's weaknesses. They constantly plot to outmaneuver one another, even going so far as to incite minor insurrections against each other in secret attempts to gain the upper hand. But whenever an external threat looms or an enemy tries to exploit their division, Belial and Fierna always and instantly close ranks and unite to crush the interloper, and together they are said to be unstoppable. Now, the thing about Phlegethos as a layer is that, much like Minauros, there is a theme that is at play here, a sin as a theme. Now, in Minauros, it was greed combined with a touch of decay, almost as if to symbolize that greed rots you and will inevitably always drown you. In Phlegethos, it is vice combined with fire and weapons of war. Perhaps to symbolize how the darkest of vices destroys not just you, but everyone else around you. And, well, the darkest vice showcased here in Phlegethos is in fact lust, though more specifically, lust of the taboo. Rumors have always circulated regarding the, close relationship between Belial and Fierna. Now, the rumors come from the fact that both have been described at times as being very sexual people, like literally that's how they are described. Let me quote you the direct description of the two, directly taken from Fiendish Codex 2, Tyrants of the Nine Hells. Quote, Phlegethos is controlled by its nominal ruler, the Lady Fierna and her father Belial, the power behind the throne. Their sensual, lustful natures fuel diabolical gossip throughout the layers of Bator. Some say Fierna has replaced her late mother, Naomi, as Belial's consort. End quote. Fiona, in particular, is known to dally quite a bit whenever she gets the chance. In fact, the lore states that Gasra, in particular, the Pete Fiend that runs the police force for the first 4 layers, is actually one of her most common partners. Now, let me also find you an official description of the lair. Quote, Fiona's palace dominates the landscape of Phlegethos for miles. A lithe, sneaking tower of crystalline stone wreathed in blue flame just sinuously into the shimmering air, rising from a ring of sputtering magma pools. Inside the tower, a burning staircase spirals down into the earth, leading to Fiona's pleasure domes. Each of these deep caverns is devoted to a separate vice. Grates in the floor allow easy access to the inhabitants of a warren of prison cells below. Whenever she grows bored, Fiona can take a long lance and jab downward at a captive paladin or unicorn. A good percentage of these cells are reserved entirely for the growing ranks of Fiona's ex-lovers. Her current paramours can easily see the fates to which their predecessors have been consigned, but they rarely stop to consider that they are likely to meet the same end. End quote. And then, of course, is the description given to us from one of the darkest books that Wizards of the Coast has ever released. The Book of Vile Darkness. You know that there's about to be something really good and spicy whenever I take out this book. In here, they leave nothing to the imagination, and I mean nothing. Are you ready? Because I'm gonna read it. Here it goes. Quote, Fiona has gained a reputation as an insatiable consumer of males, with little care or discrimination. Her father is really no better, quenching his dark needs often with captives, slaves, and other devils. Some say that Fiona and Belial's relationship has been consummated in incestuous ways. End quote. This is what I mean about the sin that surrounds the themes of Phlegethos. It is not just lost, it's just really bad lost. Because of this, Belial in particular is seen by immortals as a patron of domination, secrets, trickery, and seduction. We are even given an example of the type of cultist that would pray to someone like Belial, and these are not good people, okay? Now, in this book, again, the Book of Vile Darkness, every single cult is given an example of what a high-level cultist from that cult would look like. And they give you statistics, history, role-playing tips, and everything. And the one that we got for Belial is, it's pretty bad, it's pretty dark. Quote, cultists. Dinbar is a masochist who enjoys kidnapping female gnomes and then forcing them to inflict pain upon him in deviant sexual scenarios. Then he murders and dismembers them. He is a loner and otherwise keeps to himself. End quote. Now, I should mention that Dinbar is himself a gnome, okay? So that's why he presumably targets female gnomes. So female gnomes in this instance is not a stand-in for you know what. But anyways, as you might expect, both Belial and Fiona surround themselves with a menagerie of infernal courtiers, advisors, sycophants, and of course, slaves. The very atmosphere of the lair does seem to instill in its denizens a kind of warped mingling of pain and pleasure, which again is just part of the themes here. And in fact, devils sworn to the Lord and Lady of the Fourth are actually said to develop an unnerving infatuation with suffering, as if they drew a perverse form of strength and joy from agony, regardless of whether it was inflicted on others or even upon themselves. This is another factor that we will touch on later on, which is pain and the perverse gratification of it. But for now, let's leave the city of Abramock and now go back to the fiery landscape that awaits outside. Let's talk about the creatures that you can find on this layer. Now, one unusual population on Phlegethos consists of a dwindling band of salamanders. Eons ago, Belial brought a host of salamanders to this layer and bound them into his service, hoping to use them as shock troops. But the salamanders proved far too intractable to be good servants. They ended up rebelling and had to be put down. Now, most of them were slaughtered, but a few escaped into the wilds of Phlegethos. Now, those survivors have managed to persist by staying on the layer's most remote reaches and avoiding direct confrontations with any devils. But This is why you can find salamanders in here. In addition, the broiling swamps and soot-choked skies are also home to fire elementals, as you can imagine, as well as clouds of Crepicious Mephits. Now, the Mephits in particular, which again infest the swampy areas of the realm, they usually work as informants for hire for any devil that is willing to pay them any money. There's also companies of Ifrit that can be encountered here, drawn by the familiar element, as you can imagine, as well as the diplomatic dealings that they do with Hell's nobility. And there are also lots of packs of hellhounds that prowl the ash dunes in here. In fact, many of the infernal dogs that you can find on the realm are actually bred in Phlegethos. The lowest vaults of Abramock are said to be ringed with kennels, where both Belial and Fierna actually practiced their Beastmaster methods, rearing vicious hounds designed for war. And apparently they're really good at it, because these hellhounds are, the lore states, big and strong enough to even rival the legendary Nessian warhounds from Asmodeus' own lair, which is a big deal, by the way. And there's a reason why whenever you see a picture of Asmodeus, you usually also see a hellhound in there, because those are pretty strong boys. But yeah, outside of all of these creatures, you also have Hellstinger scorpions, which are a particularly deadly type whose stingers are said to deliver a type of burning venom that can harm even devils themselves, which, as you all know, are typically immune to poison. But, for all of his infamy, and as famous, I suppose, as some of the specific individual things about Phlegethos can be, relatively little is actually known to outsiders about everything else. Largely because so few uninvited guests ever return from here alive. Strangers who enter the lair are typically burned to death by the flames. Period. Or if not, they're caught by Gasrus patrols and incarcerated, or simply slain on sight by all of the crazy monstrous fauna that live here. As a result, most would-be travelers just avoid the fourth layer of hell entirely. But those with no choice but to enter are advised to do so directly through Abramock, again the only safe place in here, and to do so quietly and to keep their heads down and then leave as quickly as possible. Because it is said that even the great gods of the multiverse tend to leave Phlegethos alone. This is for two major reasons. One is that Phlegethos has a source of readily accessible hellfire, which we will talk about later, but suffice to say that this thing has the power to harm even gods. But also two, legend says that a once great and powerful god once perished here. Let's talk about that. Whispers and legends abound to fill in the gaps of what people do not know for sure. One oft-told tale held that the city of Abramock was built upon the spot where a deity perished in ancient times. It is curious indeed that the shape of certain parts of the city of Abramock, certain spires, certain portions of the volcano, evoke the image of a colossal torture figure rising out of the lake of lava. This fuels the stories that it was the demise of a god which gave birth to this hellscape, and of course, gave sentience to the fire of this layer. Governor Gasra himself has openly encouraged this rumor, claiming that Abramock was literally the husk of a lost god. See, this is interesting because the description of Abramock from the Manual of the Plains from 3rd edition states this. Quote, "The city of hardened magma, obsidian, and crystal squats in the caldera of an almost extinct volcano. Abramock's foundation is said to be the grave of a deity slain by Asmodeus." End quote. So this is not just a god that died here. It was a god that was slain by Asmodeus. But why is that interesting? Well, because we know of one god that was slain by Asmodeus, and you know of whom I speak. But let me retell it to you. One of the creation myths for Asmodeus and the Nine Hells. Again, do keep in mind that there are several versions of this tale, and each version is vastly different than the last, but all of which tell the creation of the Nine Hells and the descent of Asmodeus into the Hells. But here is the myth of he who was. The god at the heart of the myth was remembered only by the titles He Who Was or He Who Once Lit Our Way, because Asmodeus erased the deity's true name from existence. A few mortal scholars still recalled it. and rumor held that Asmodeus sent powerful devils to kill anyone who spoke it out loud, for he continues to fear it even in modern times. He who was once ranked among the greatest of gods, and ruled a great realm once called Bathion, a celestial realm founded on law, morality, and peace. He presided over kinship, the sky, wisdom, and, by some accounts, knowledge, and was even said to have created humanity. By his generosity, his archangels rose as near equal exerts and demigods, agents through whom he meant to spread justice and peace across the multiverse. The mightiest among them was Asmodeus. In the late Dawn War, after the Queen of Chaos fell and the demons were beaten back, Asmodeus stood among the exemplars of chastity and virtue who were set to guard the prison of Tharizdun, the elder elemental evil. But in that aftermath, Pazuzu, one of the original primordials and the current demon prince of the first layer of the abyss, approached Asmodeus with flattery, claiming his loyalty had earned only a thankless eternity. Vanity and false pride then took root in the heart of Asmodeus. Asmodeus came to see himself as more righteous than his own god. He listened to whispers from the abyss and, as many theologians would say, began his fall into darkness. Abandoning his post, Asmodeus hurled himself into the Blood Rift and accomplished what none had done before. He actually reached the core of the abyss, and in there he found its heart. And from the black heart, he stole a sliver. The theft is believed to have deepened the root of evil upon him and would set his and his followers' eventual transformation into devils. Asmodeus' methods grew ever harsher, killing innocents along with foes, and for this reason he who was stripped him of rank. Showing mercy, the god spared his life and left him and his followers broken at the edges of Bathion, hoping that in time Asmodeus would repent. But pride won out. The fallen angel nursed his wounds and planned revenge on all the gods who, in his view, had forgotten his sacrifices during the Dawn War. And so the myth goes that Asmodeus and his army rebelled. He forged the sliver of the abyss that he had stolen into the ruby rod, and then used it to slay his deity. But the victory became a curse. With his dying breath, he who was transformed Bathion, once bright, verdant, and good, into Bator, a world of black rock, unending fire, death, and torment. Forests, oceans, and even the god's beloved garden burned away. The focus of the late god's ire, however, went straight into the encampment where the army of Asmodeus rested. There, the angelic army was swallowed by intolerable flame. Their bodies warped, and they became devils. The curse bound Asmodeus and his angelic host within Bator and denied him the full divine power of the god he murdered. And so was the birth of the devils and the creation of the nine hells. This is one of the creation myths that speak of the rise of Asmodeus as the Lord of Hell. And if it is to be believed, then it is here, in Phlegethos, directly under the city of Abramok, where you can find the corpse of he who was, the original ruler of this plane. But even more interesting is actually the location where the curse originated. That's right. The place where the original angelic army that fought for Asmodeus was located before he who was obliterated them with fire. The origin point of the curse that transformed them all into devils and created the hells. This place is called the Pit of Flame. The Pit of Flame lays at the center of Phlegethos, a lake roughly 1 mile across filled not with water but with boiling filth and excreta. From this noxious stew erupts columns of blinding white flame that shoot hundreds of feet into the air. Now, at first glance, one might think that the pit is harmless to devils, because after all, nearly all devils are immune to ordinary fire, but the flames of this lake are no ordinary fire. This is hellfire, an unspeakably hot, supernatural blaze drawn from the very essence of Bator. Hellfire burns so intensely that even beings normally immune to heat always find themselves seared and agonized by it. The Pit of Flame serves as Bator's ultimate punishment. By infernal law, any Bone Devil, and indeed any sufficiently high ranking devil, can actually condemn a lesser devil to the Lake of Fire for breaking the laws of hell. The devils of every layer would sometimes send subordinates here as punishment for failure or disobedience. Asmodeus is even said to banish those who earn his extreme displeasure right there into the pit for centuries of torment. Now, this fate is among the worst in Bator, one of the very few things that could actually make even a pit fiend quake in fear. That is because this fire cannot really kill a devil if they are immune to fire, but it'll hurt them. It's like torture, like eternal torture for them. Now, fierce and ambitious devils do sometimes subject themselves to its agony intentionally. They might do so to prove their endurance, to harden their will, to cleanse themselves of weaknesses, or even to experience a twisted kind of euphoria that some devils derive from the extreme pain. Because of course, remember that pleasure from pain is, after all, a theme in this layer of hell. But for ages, the Pit of Flame also functioned as a neutral ground for settling infernal feuds. Rival devils would sometimes mutually agree to enter the flames together just to see whose will was stronger and who would break first. Basically, to see that who would last longer in the torture of the hellfire. Now, the pit itself is outfitted as if for executions. You have massive iron spheres that hang suspended by huge beams over the lake of fire, designed as prison cages to hold devils condemned to suffer. Dozens of bearded devils operate the machinery, and 999 horned devils patrol the surroundings, a necessary protection to guard against the terrible devils that are imprisoned in there. But what makes hellfire so particularly unique and so interesting actually is the innate power that it has. Again, if the myth holds true, then this would be the source of the very energy that created the devils in the first place and the nine hells. And actually, this would be corroborated by the fact that devils can actually use this hellfire, found in the Pit of Flame, as a crucible for demotion and promotion. That's right, hellfire can be used to evolve a devil into the next tier of power or have its might sapped down into the prior tier. If a devil were to have its fire immunity removed and the hellfire were then to consume them, the devil would be reshaped. Now, the nature of the transformation the devil would go through would be dependent on the rules of the Pact Primeval. So a devil couldn't just force their way in there and just make it happen. Normally, the devil would have to be officially granted the right for promotion or be officially sentenced to demotion before such a thing could happen. Now, I say normally because the Pact Primeval does have special stipulations that would allow a devil to just undergo the transformation on their own, but of course, those secrets are known likely only to Asmodeus. Now, we, however, do know of 3 such stipulations. One is that if a devil is able to survive in hellfire for 1001 days, then they would be immediately transformed into a pit fiend. This is actually one of the only ways to become a pit fiend because, of course, one can only be offered a promotion by a higher ranked devil, and as you know, pit fiends are effectively at the top. And as you can imagine, no devil would want to ever promote someone to an equal station than they are. That's insane, as that would always mean more competition and no more leverage against that devil. Only an idiot would do that. So that virtually never happens. So the Pit of Flame does provide this avenue for evolution if you have the willpower for it. And the other last rule that we do know regarding the Pit of Flame is that if a devil were to survive for 3 full days on the pit, they would be able to change the sex of their fiendish form. Isn't that interesting? Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested in learning more about Phlegethos, or you wish to use a lot of this information in your own games, or if you simply want a nice and elegantly written version of this video, then please check out my Patreon where I upload companion PDFs for every single video that I upload. For this video, I made lore-friendly stat blocks for both Belial and Fierna, just for you guys. I put together the most important information about Phlegethos with a bunch of the mechanical stuff, such as the planar properties of the layer, the fire damage of the environment, went. I broke down the city of Avramok into its most important components. I covered the Pit of Flame. I even remade some of the old encounters that were released for Phlegethos in past editions, reimagining them and rebalancing them just for 5th edition, so that you guys could use them. Because a lot of this information has been released in the past, but it just gets forgotten. Just gets kind of like obliviated into the past, and even if you were to find it, most of the time you can't even use it because it's on previous editions. So I decided I would convert some of this and just let you guys enjoy it. I spend so much time doing this stuff, so please consider supporting me by checking out the Patreon, where you can download all of these packets. So thank you all so much. Also, of course, if you want to purchase my fully released Sands of Doom hardcover book, you can do so at my website at MrRhexx.store. The link is also in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.